Some moments change everything. Not the big ones we expect, not weddings or graduations or the day the doctor gives bad news. No, it's the small ones. A sound in the night. A door we almost didn't open. I've learned, after nearly 7 decades on this earth, that life doesn't announce its turning points. They just arrive, quiet as snow, and by the time you understand what happened, you're already someone different. This story is about one of those moments, about a woman whose hands had failed her, about a mother dog who had nothing left to give, and about a night so cold it should have killed them both, but didn't. The thermometer read 17 below. Vivian Crawford stood at the storm door in her nightgown, bare feet on cold linoleum, listening. The wind had been howling for hours, but this sound was different. Lower, broken. She pressed her palm against the glass. Frost bit her skin. There it was again. Not the wind. Something alive. Her hands were shaking. They always shook now. Ever since the stroke, but she reached for the door handle anyway. The doctor's voice echoed somewhere in the back of her mind. Cold is dangerous for you, Vivian. Another episode could... She opened the door. The porch light flickered once, then held. And there, on the frozen boards near the empty dish she'd left out for the stray cats, lay a German shepherd. Bones showing through matted fur. Body curled around 4 tiny shapes that weren't moving. The wood smoke from her chimney drifted low in the frozen air. The dog must have followed it here, the only warmth for miles. The dog's eyes lifted to meet hers. No fear, no begging, just one look that said everything I brought them here to die warm. If this story has already touched your heart, I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Drop your city or state below, it warms my soul to know we're all gathered here together, like neighbors on a long winter evening. Vivian's knees hit the frozen porch boards before she realized she'd moved. The cold shot through her nightgown, through skin, straight to bone. Her hands useless. Trembling things reached toward the dog. The German shepherd flinched, then stilled, up close. The damage was worse. Ribs like piano keys under stretched hide. Hip bones jutting sharp enough to tear the matted fur. And the smell wet dog, old blood, something sour underneath. The puppies weren't moving. Vivian's chest seized. She bent closer, fingers hovering over the nearest one. A tiny body, slick with birth fluid. Already crusting with frost. Then it twitched. Alive. Still alive. She counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, all breathing. Shallow. But breathing. The mother dog watched her with yellow-brown eyes. Didn't growl, didn't snap, just watched, like she'd already decided something and was waiting for Vivian to catch up. Vivian pushed herself to standing. Her left knee popped loss in the frozen silence. The tremor in her hands had spread to her arms now, the cold making everything worse. 2 years since the stroke, and still her body betrayed her at the worst moments. She looked back through the storm door. The kitchen light spilled yellow across the linoleum. The phone hung on the wall by the refrigerator. She could call someone. Animal control, the vet's emergency line. By the time anyone got here from town, 20 minutes at least, maybe more in this weather, no time. The wood stove would be dying by now. She'd let it burn low before bed, same as every night for the past 2 years. Alone in this house Walter built. The Steinway in the living room, lid closed, sheet thrown over it like a body at a crime scene. 14 months since anyone had touched those keys, since little Amy Brennan's mother called to say they'd found another teacher. Someone whose hands don't shake? Mrs. Crawford? The dog whimpered. Low, broken. Vivian looked down at her hands. The fingers that once made Debussy weep from a concert stage. Now they couldn't button her own dress most mornings. But they could hold a towel. They could carry a box. She turned back inside, grabbed Walter's old coat from the hook and shoved her bare feet into his boots by the door. Too big, but warm. When she returned to the porch, she knelt again and looked at the dog's back. Circular marks, dozens of them, puckered skin beneath the matted fur, arranged in no pattern that nature would make. Cigarette burns. Vivian's fingers hovered over the marks. Round, deliberate, the size of a cigarette tip pressed into flesh until it scarred. Her stomach turned. She'd seen burns like this once before, 32 years ago, on the arm of a student, a quiet girl named Rebecca who always wore long sleeves, even in June. Vivian had asked once, just once, the girl never came back for lessons. The German shepherd lay still beneath her trembling hand. Patient. Waiting. "Who did this to you?" Vivian whispered. The dog's ear, the right one, torn and healed, crooked, twitched toward her voice. But no answer came. None was needed. The body told the story plain enough. The wind cut across the porch. Walter's coat snapped against her legs. 17 below, and she was kneeling on frozen boards in her dead husband's boots. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice that sounded like him said, "You'll catch your death out here." Viv. She pushed the voice away. The puppies first. One at a time. She pulled off Walter's coat and wrapped the nearest puppy in its folds. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. The tiny body fit in her palm, warm, impossibly light, slick with fluid that was already turning to ice crystals on the fur. Inside. To the kitchen. She set the bundle in a cardboard box near the wood stove, then grabbed a towel from the bathroom and went back for the second. The cold hit harder each time she stepped onto the porch. Her toes had gone numb somewhere between the second and third trip. Even inside Walter's boots, the fourth puppy smaller than the others, barely moving, she held against her chest, inside her nightgown, feeling its faint heartbeat flutter against her ribs. The runt, there was always a runt. 4 puppies in the box now, huddled together, making sounds like kittens, mewling, searching for warmth they couldn't find. Vivian turned back to the porch. The mother hadn't moved. "Come on, the cook girl." Vivian held the storm door open with her hip. "Inside. Let's go." The German shepherd's legs shifted, muscles tensed beneath the scarred hide. She tried to rise. Her front legs buckled. She collapsed back onto the frozen boards. Tried again. Same result. The dog looked up at Vivian. Something passed through those yellow-brown eyes. Not shame. Exactly. Something worse. The look of a creature that had pushed past every limit and found one more wall it couldn't climb. Vivian understood that look. She'd seen it in her own mirror, the morning after the stroke, when her left hand wouldn't close around a coffee cup. She stepped back onto the porch. The cold was a physical thing now, pressing against her chest, squeezing the air from her lungs. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely control them, but she knelt anyway. "All right," she said. "We do this together." She worked her arms under the dog's chest. The ribs pressed sharp against her forearms. 90 pounds of dog, maybe more when healthy, but now, wasted down to bone and desperation. She couldn't weigh more than 60, still heavy. Vivian's back screamed as she lifted. The German shepherd didn't fight her, didn't snap, just let herself be raised, legs hanging loose, head dropping against Vivian's shoulder, 3 steps to the door, Vivian's knee buckled on the second one. She caught herself on the doorframe, dog still in her arms, breathing hard through her teeth. "Don't you quit on me," she muttered. Whether to the dog or herself, she wasn't sure. 2 more steps. Through the kitchen, past the table where she ate alone every night, past the counter where Walter used to make his Folgers every morning, past the phone that never rang anymore. She set the dog down beside the wood stove. The German Shepherd's body hit the worn rug with a soft thump. She lay there, panting, eyes half closed. Vivian's arms burned, her back throbbed. Her toes had gone from numb to tingling, not a good sign. She knew. She'd have to soak them in warm water before bed, if she ever got to bed. But the dog was inside. The puppies were inside. The stove was still giving off heat, enough to push back the cold. She added 2 logs from the pile by the door. Her hands fumbled with the iron handle. Trembling. Useless. The log slipped, she caught it, fed it to the flames. The fire crackled. Shadows danced across the kitchen walls. The old radio on the counter sat silent. She'd been meaning to tune it to that station that played Nat King Cole. But tonight there was no time. Vivian sank down onto the floor beside the German Shepherd. Her nightgown was soaked with snow and birth fluid and something that might have been blood. Her whole body shook cold. Exhaustion, adrenaline draining away. The dog lifted her head. Slowly, like it cost her everything she had left. She looked at Vivian. Then she stretched her neck forward and pressed her nose into Vivian's palm. The trembling hand, the useless hand, the hand that couldn't play a single note anymore. The dog pressed into it like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. Vivian's throat tightened. She didn't speak, couldn't. She just sat there, on the kitchen floor of the house her dead husband built, with a half-dead dog's head in her ruined hands, while 4 orphaned puppies mewled in a cardboard box and the fire popped and the wind howled outside. The clock on the wall read 12:23 a.m. Saturday now, a new day, and somewhere out there, whoever had burned this dog with cigarettes and left her to die in 17 below weather was still walking around free. Vivian called Dr. Helen Marsh at 6 in the morning. The phone rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. "This better be an emergency." "Helen, it's Vivian Crawford. I've got a dog, German Shepherd. She showed up on my porch last night with 4 puppies. She's in bad shape." A pause, the sound of sheets rustling. "How bad?" "Starving. Frostbite, I think. And Helen, someone burned her. Cigarettes. Dozens of them." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll be there in an hour." She arrived in 45 minutes. Helen Marsh was 58, built like a fence post. With gray hair cut short and practical, she'd been the only vet in Hartfield for 23 years. She'd put down Walter's hunting dog when the cancer got too bad. She didn't waste words. She knelt beside the German Shepherd and opened her bag. The examination took 20 minutes. Vivian watched from the kitchen chair. Hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. The Folgers had gone cold. Helen checked the dog's gums, her eyes, her paws. She pressed gentle fingers along the rib cage. She looked at the burns for a long time without speaking. Finally, she sat back on her heels. Severe malnutrition, hasn't eaten properly in weeks, maybe longer. The frostbite on her pads is bad but not permanent. She got inside just in time. She's got 3 healed rib fractures. Old ones. Helen's jaw tightened. And those burns. Some are months old. Some are years. Someone did this to her. Someone tortured her. Helen's voice was flat, clinical, but her hands weren't steady when she closed her bag. Then threw her away like garbage. The German Shepherd lay still through all of it, eyes open, watching, but making no sound. Helen moved to the cardboard box, examined each puppy in turn. 3 of them squirmed and mewled at her touch. The 4th, The runt barely moved. "This one's weak. Might not make it." She looked at Vivian. "The others should be fine if they're fed every 2 hours. Formula warmed. I'll leave supplies." Vivian nodded. Helen stood, brushed off her knees. "I can take them to the shelter in Montpelier. They'll find homes for the puppies. The mother—" She hesitated. "They'll do what they can." "No." The word came out harder than Vivian intended. Helen looked at her. Really looked. "Vivian, you can barely—" She stopped herself, but the unfinished sentence hung in the air like smoke. "You can barely take care of yourself. Your hands. Your health. You're 69 years old and alone." Vivian set down the cold coffee. "My hands can hold a bottle. My hands can keep a fire lit. That's enough. It's a lot of work. Every 2 hours. Around the clock. For weeks." "I know." Helen studied her for a long moment. Whatever she saw made her sigh and reach into her bag. She pulled out bottles. Formula powder, ointment, bandages. Set them on the table. "Feed the puppies every 2 hours. Keep the mother warm and hydrated. Soft food only for the first few days. Her stomach won't handle anything heavy. Clean those burns twice a day with this ointment." She pulled out a card and set it on top of the pile. "My personal number. Call if anything changes." "Thank you." Helen paused at the door, looked back at the German shepherd lying by the wood stove. "She's a German shepherd," she said. "They bond hard. If you keep her, she'll never leave you." Vivian looked at the dog. The dog looked back. Good. The next 4 days blurred together. Vivian's life became a rhythm of bottles and towels and the wood stove's constant hunger. Every 2 hours. She warmed formula and fed the puppies one by one. Her hands shook. She spilled half of every bottle. But she managed. The German shepherd Vivian had started calling her Spirit in her head. Though she wasn't sure why ate soft food on the second day, just a little. By the third day, she could stand on her own, though her legs trembled and she didn't stay up long. The runt was the hardest. He wouldn't latch onto the bottle, wouldn't eat. Vivian stayed up all night on the third night, holding him against her chest inside her nightgown, feeling his tiny heartbeat flutter against her ribs. By morning, he was drinking. Weak, but drinking. The formula was expensive. Vivian did the math in her head and knew she'd have to cut somewhere else this month. The oil bill, maybe. She could keep the thermostat lower and rely on the wood stove. Her back ached. Her hands hurt worse than they had in months. She forgot her blood pressure medication 2 days in a row. But for the first time in 2 years, she had a reason to set her alarm. On the 4th evening, Spirit wandered into the living room. Vivian found her lying on the floor next to the Steinway, head on her paws, watching nothing. The piano sat silent under its white sheet. Vivian hadn't touched it since the last student left. 14 months of dust. She stood in the doorway, looking at the shape of it. The curves she knew better than her own body. 40 years of her life lived at those keys. Slowly, she walked over, knelt beside Spirit, reached up and pulled back the sheet. Just a corner. Just enough to see the keys. Dusty, but the wood still gleamed underneath. Walter had kept it polished every week until the day he died. Spirit watched her. Vivian's hand hovered over the keyboard, trembling. She pressed one key, middle C. The note rang out pure. Clear, unchanged by time or silence or grief. She pulled her hand back. Not yet, not ready, but the sheet stayed off. The truck came up the driveway on Wednesday afternoon. Vivian was in the kitchen, warming a bottle of formula for the runt she'd started calling him Little One in her head, though she knew better than to name them when the rumble of an engine cut through the silence. Spirit's head lifted from her spot by the wood stove. Her ears flattened. A low growl started in her chest. Vivian set down the bottle, wiped her trembling hands on her apron, walked to the window. A black Ford F-250, mud-splattered, pulled to a stop behind her old Subaru. The engine died. A man climbed out from the driver's side broad shoulders, Carhartt jacket the color of dried tobacco, a face that looked like it had been carved from hardwood and left out in the weather too long. He stood there, looking at the house, taking his time. A woman sat in the passenger seat, didn't move, didn't look up, just sat there, with her hands in her lap, staring at nothing. Spirit's growl deepened. Vivian's heart was beating too fast. She pressed her palm flat against her chest, feeling the flutter beneath her ribs. 5 days since she'd found Spirit on the porch. 5 days of bottle feeding and wound cleaning and sleepless nights. 5 days without a single visitor except Dr. Helen. Now this, she walked to the front door, opened it before the man could knock. He was bigger up close. 45, maybe. Hard eyes the color of river mud, a cigarette tucked behind his right ear. His knuckles were scarred old wounds, healed, white, and thick. Mrs. Crawford. Not a question. He knew who she was. Can I help you? Heard you got my dog. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Vivian felt the ripples move through her chest, her stomach, down to her trembling hands. I found a dog, she said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Half dead. On my porch. German Shepherd. Female. Pregnant when she ran off. The man's eyes moved past her, into the house. Names, Gunners, Pride. I got papers. Spirit appeared in the hallway behind Vivian. She'd risen from her spot by the stove, moving on legs that still shook but held her weight now, her lips pulled back from her teeth. The man saw her. Something flickered across his face. Loss? Maybe. Or something darker. There she is. He took a step toward the door. Spirit's growl turned into a snarl. Vivian didn't move. She ran off. 3 weeks back. Been looking everywhere. 3 weeks. Vivian let the words sit there. She gave birth on my porch. 17 below. Alone. That ain't my problem. The man's jaw tightened. She's my property. Those puppies too. Your property. I got papers, he said again, like papers explained everything, like papers made it right. Vivian looked at his hands. The scarred knuckles, the yellow nicotine stains on his fingers, the cigarette behind his ear. She thought about the burns on Spirit's back. Dozens of them, round and deliberate, and... No, she said. The man blinked. Excuse me. I said no. You're not taking her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wind picked up, rattling the storm door. In the truck, the woman still hadn't looked up. The man stepped closer, close enough that Vivian could smell him tobacco and motor oil and something sour underneath. You're making a mistake, old woman. Spirit pushed past Vivian's legs, positioned herself between them, hackles raised, teeth bared. 60 pounds of starved German Shepherd, barely able to stand a week ago, now ready to fight. Vivian's hands were shaking. They always shook, but her voice didn't. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. Mr. Hutchins. Dale Hutchins. Mr. Hutchins. She held his gaze. This ain't one of them. Something moved behind his eyes. Not quite rage. Colder than that. The look of a man who wasn't used to hearing no. He held the stare for 3 seconds. 4, 5. Then he stepped back. "This ain't over," he said. "I'll be back. With the sheriff." He walked to the truck, climbed in. The engine roared to life. The woman in the passenger seat finally looked up. Just for a moment, her eyes met Vivian's through the windshield. Then Dale Hutchins put the truck in reverse, and they were gone. Spirit stood rigid at Vivian's side, watching the taillights disappear down the driveway. Her growl faded slowly, like thunder rolling away over distant hills. Vivian's knees felt weak. She leaned against the doorframe, pressing her palm to her chest again. The flutter was worse now. Dr. Morton had warned her about stress, about keeping her blood pressure down, about being careful. Careful? What a word. She looked down at Spirit. The dog looked back up at her. "Well," Vivian said, "I guess we know who hurt you now." Sheriff Roy Camden arrived the next morning at 9:15. Vivian saw the cruiser coming up the driveway and felt her stomach drop. She'd been expecting this. Hadn't slept more than 2 hours, waiting for it. She met him at the door. Roy was a big man, gone soft around the middle, with a gray mustache and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. He'd been sheriff for 22 years. Walter used to play poker with him on Thursday nights. Mrs. Crawford. He took off his hat, turned it in his hands. "I expect you know why I'm here." "Dale Hutchins." "Yes, ma'am. He filed a report yesterday evening. Says you're keeping his dog." Vivian stepped aside. "Come in, Roy. I'll put coffee on." They sat at the kitchen table. Spirit stayed in her spot by the wood stove, but her eyes never left the sheriff. The puppies were asleep in their box, a warm pile of fur and small sounds. Roy looked at them, looked at Spirit. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "She was in bad shape when I found her," Vivian said. "Dr. Helen came out Saturday morning. She documented everything." "What kind of everything?" "Cigarette burns, dozens of them, old rib fractures, malnutrition." Vivian's hands trembled as she poured the coffee. "That dog was tortured. Roy, for months, maybe years." The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. He lifted his cup, took a sip, set it down. "Dale's got papers," he said finally. "Registration, old vet records. In the eyes of the law, that dog is his property." Property? The word tasted like ash in Vivian's mouth. "I don't make the rules, Mrs. Crawford. I just enforce them." He looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes. Discomfort. Maybe. Or shame. If he can prove ownership, and you won't return the animal voluntarily, then what? Then it goes to a hearing. Animal control. Sarah Mitchell handles those cases. He paused. There'd be a formal process. You'd have a chance to present evidence. Evidence of abuse. Evidence of anything you've got. Vivian wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. The warmth helped with the trembling. A little. "When would this hearing be?" "Sunday, if you want to push it. Dale's already talking to a lawyer." Roy set down his cup, looked at her straight. "Off the record. Off the record. I've known Dale Hutchins 20 years. Never liked him. Never trusted him." His voice dropped. "I believe you, Mrs. Crawford. I've seen the way that man treats things. People, animals, doesn't matter. He's got a meanness in him. Then why? Because believing ain't evidence." Roy stood, put his hat back on. "Get pictures. Get statements. Get anything you can. And pray Sarah Mitchell sees what I see." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "Walter was a good man," he said. "He'd be proud of you for this." Then he was gone. Word spread through Hartfield like fire through dry brush. By Thursday afternoon, Vivian could feel it, the weight of other people's opinions pressing in from all sides. The phone rang twice that morning. She didn't answer. The machine picked up. No messages left. Maggie Webb showed up at 2 o'clock. Casserole dish in hand, concern on her face. "I heard," she said, before Vivian could even invite her in. "About the dog. And Dale." News travels fast. It's a small town. "Vivian, you know how it is." Maggie set the casserole on the counter. Her eyes moved to Spirit, still by the wood stove, still watching. "People are talking. Let them talk. The Hutchins family has been here 4 generations. Dale's uncle is on the town council. His cousin runs the feed store." Maggie lowered her voice. "I'm just saying, be careful." Vivian felt something hot rise in her chest. "And how long have I been here?" "Maggie, 40 years. But you're—" She stopped herself. "I'm what old alone say it." Maggie's cheeks flushed. "I didn't mean my word should count for something." Vivian's voice was harder than she intended. 40 years I've lived in this town, taught half the children in it to play piano. Walter built the addition on the Methodist church with his own hands. And now I'm supposed to hand over a beaten dog because Dale Hutchins has papers." Maggie didn't answer. She looked at the floor, at the casserole. Anywhere but Vivian's eyes. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I just don't want to see you get hurt." She left the casserole. She left. Vivian stood alone in the kitchen, hands shaking, heart pounding. Spirit walked over, pressed against her legs. "I know, girl. I know." The general store was worse. She needed dog food. The puppies were starting to eat mashed solid food now, mixed with formula, and she was running low. She couldn't avoid town forever. The bell over the door chimed as she walked in. 3 people in the store. All of them looked up. All of them looked away. Vivian grabbed a cart, pushed it toward the pet aisle. Whispers. She couldn't hear the words, but she could feel them. Little knives sliding between her shoulder blades. A man stepped into her path. Mid-30s, red beard, work boots caked with mud. She didn't recognize him. "You're Mrs. Crawford," he said. Not friendly. "I am. Dale Hutchins is my cousin." He crossed his arms. "Heard you're keeping his dog, calling him an abuser." Vivian's hands tightened on the cart handle. "I haven't called him anything. I'm just keeping a dog that showed up half dead on my porch. That dog is his property. You got no right." "Then I guess we'll let the hearing decide that." The man leaned closer. "You know what people are saying. They're saying you've lost it. Old woman, living alone, talking to dogs. Maybe the stroke did more damage than anyone thought." The words hit like a slap. Vivian's vision blurred for a moment. Her hands shook so hard the cart rattled. But she didn't look away. "Maybe they're right," she said quietly. "But that dog stays with me until a judge says otherwise. Now excuse me, I need dog food." She pushed past him, grabbed 2 bags of kibble, paid at the counter without looking at anyone, walked to her car, in the parking lot. Her hand shook so badly she dropped her keys twice. Pastor Thomas Reed called that evening. "Vivian." His voice was warm, familiar, the voice that had read Walter's eulogy 8 years ago. "I heard what's happening. Are you all right?" She laughed. It came out wrong, too sharp, too brittle. "Define all right." "How about this, do you need anything?" Vivian sank into the kitchen chair. Spirit lay at her feet. The puppies were making small sounds in their box. "Pray, I guess. That's your job." "It is, but I also visit people who need reminding they're not alone." The words caught in her throat. She looked around the kitchen, the empty chair where Walter used to sit. The Steinway gathering dust in the next room. The silence that filled every corner of this house. "Come Sunday," she said finally. "Before the hearing. If you want, I'll be there at 7. She hung up, sat in the silence. Spirit put her head on Vivian's knee. The hearing was in 3 days. Friday night, late, Vivian was gathering what evidence she had. Dr. Helen's written statement, Polaroid photos of Spirit's burns, taken with the old camera Walter used for documenting his carpentry work, the puppy's growth proof of good care, her own notes, scribbled in shaking handwriting. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough. She had no lawyer, no money for one, no family to stand beside her, just a 69-year-old woman with trembling hands, against a man who knew how the system worked. She was staring at the photos when headlights swept across the kitchen window. Spirit's head lifted. The growl started low in her chest. Vivian walked to the window. The black Ford. Again. But this time, when Dale climbed out, Clara came with him. She opened the passenger door and stepped down onto the frozen gravel. Arms wrapped around herself like she was cold even in her heavy coat. She stayed 3 steps behind her husband, eyes on the ground. Vivian opened the front door before they reached it. "Last chance," Dale said. "No preamble, no pretense. Give me the dog. I dropped the complaint. We all go back to our lives. Why do you even want her? You threw her away." Dale's eyes hardened. "She's a purebred. Puppies are worth money. $800 each. Easy." $800 each? 4 puppies? $3,200. That's what Spirit's suffering was worth. A price tag. "She almost died on my porch," Vivian said. "You would have let her." Dale stepped closer. "You don't know a damn thing about me." Spirit was at Vivian's side now, growling, teeth bared. Clara spoke for the first time. Her voice was thin, barely audible. "Dale, let's just go." "Shut your mouth." Clara flinched. The movement was small, quick, an automatic response, shoulders curling in, chin dropping, eyes going blank. The posture of someone who'd learned to make herself invisible. Vivian had seen that posture before. In the dog, in Spirit. Her eyes met Clara's. Something passed between them. No words, just recognition. Dale grabbed Clara's arm. "We're leaving. But Sunday. Mrs. Crawford. That dog is coming home with me. Count on it." They turned toward the truck. Clara walked ahead, reaching for the passenger door handle. As she pulled it open, the sleeve of her coat rode up her wrist. The porch light caught it clearly. Bruises, 5 of them, purple and yellow, arranged in a pattern no accident would make. The exact size and shape of fingerprints. Saturday night. The night before the hearing. Pastor Reed had left an hour ago. He'd prayed with her at the kitchen table, his big hands folded over hers, his voice steady and calm. "The Lord will provide," he'd said, and she'd nodded, because that's what you do when someone prays for you. You nod and say amen and pretend you believe it. Now the house was silent, just the tick of the clock, the pop of the dying fire, and the soft sounds of puppies breathing in their box. Vivian sat alone at the table. The evidence folder lay open in front of her, Dr. Helen's statement. The Polaroid photos, her shaky, handwritten notes. It looked thin, pathetic. The work of a desperate old woman fighting a battle she couldn't win. The runt started crying. She pushed herself up from the table. Her legs felt weak. She hadn't eaten since breakfast. Maybe not even then, but she made it to the counter. Formula, bottle, warm water from the kettle. Her hands were shaking badly tonight, worse than usual. The stress, the sleepless nights, the missed medications. She measured the powder. Half of it spilled on the counter. She tried again. More spilled. The runt's cries grew louder, sharper. The other puppies were stirring now, disturbed by the noise. Vivian's jaw tightened. She gripped the measuring cup harder, poured. Her hand jerked. The cup slipped. Powder went everywhere counter. Floor, her nightgown. No. The word came out broken. No. 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 She tried to scoop the powder back. Her fingers wouldn't cooperate. They trembled and fumbled and scattered more than they gathered. The runt was screaming now. That high, desperate sound that meant hunger, meant fear, meant help me. Help me. Help me. Vivian grabbed the bottle, tried to screw on the nipple. Her hands shook so violently she cross-threaded it. She tried again. Same result. Again. The plastic cracked. Something snapped inside her. She threw the bottle. It hit the wall beside the refrigerator with a hollow thunk and clattered to the floor. Didn't break, just lay there, empty and useless, like her. Vivian sank to the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinet, her legs straight out in front of her hands her worthless, trembling, ruined hands lying palm up in her lap like dead things. She didn't cry. She was beyond crying, beyond feeling anything except a vast, black emptiness that swallowed everything. Spirit rose from her spot by the stove, walked over, lowered herself down beside Vivian. Go away! Spirit pressed closer. I said go! Vivian pushed at her. Weak, ineffective. Find someone who can actually help you, someone whose hands still work. Spirit didn't move. The runt kept crying. The sound drilled into Vivian's skull. I was somebody. You know. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, hollow, bitter. A real teacher. People paid good money to sit in that room and listen to me. I had students at Juilliard. Juilliard. She laughed an ugly sound. Nothing like humor. Now look at me. Sitting on the floor. Can't even hold a bottle? She stared at her hands. The fingers that had once moved across ivory keys like water flowing over stones. The fingers that had shaped Beethoven and Chopin and Debussy into something that made grown men weep. Now they couldn't feed a starving puppy. Maybe I should have left you out there. The words came out before she could stop them. Cruel words. Shame-filled words. At least then you wouldn't have to watch me fall apart. Spirit's eyes, those yellow-brown eyes that had seen too much, just looked at her. No judgment, no accusation, just patience. Vivian turned away. The fire was dying. She should add wood. She should feed the puppies. She should do 100 things. She couldn't move. Time passed. She didn't know how much. The kitchen grew colder. The runt's cries faded to whimpers. Then silence. Either he'd exhausted himself or she couldn't finish that thought. At some point, she tried to stand. Her legs buckled on the first attempt. She grabbed the counter edge, pulled herself up. The world tilted. Spots danced across her vision. When had she last eaten? Yesterday. The day before, her knees gave out. She went down hard. Her hip struck the cabinet. Her shoulder hit the floor. Pain shot through her left side, bright and sharp and real. She lay there, cheek pressed against the cold linoleum, staring at the dust bunnies under the refrigerator. Can't get up, she thought. The observation felt distant, clinical, like someone else's problem. The wood stove was almost out. She could see it from here, the last embers glowing orange through the grate. In an hour, the house would be freezing. In 2 hours, the pipes might burst. In 3, does it matter? The thought was quiet, almost peaceful. This is how it ends. Not a stroke, not a hospital, just cold and tired and done. She closed her eyes. Spirit's tongue hit her face, rough, wet. insistent. Vivian flinched. Stop! Another lick, then another. Spirit's nose pushed against her cheek, her neck, her shoulder. I can't. Spirit barked, sharp and loud, right in her ear. Vivian's eyes flew open. Spirit was standing over her, paws planted on either side of her body, muscles tense, not lying down to wait, not giving up. The dog grabbed the sleeve of Vivian's nightgown in her teeth, pulled. The message was clear. Get up. I can't, Vivian whispered. Spirit barked again, pulled harder. The fabric stretched but didn't tear. The puppies started crying, all 4 of them now, a chorus of tiny voices demanding attention, demanding food, demanding life. And somewhere in that sound and the bark and the pulling and the crying, something shifted. They need you. Not the pianist, not the teacher, not the woman who played for concert halls. Just you. Right now. This minute. Vivian's hand moved, pressed flat against the cold floor. She pushed. Her arm shook, her shoulder screamed, but she pushed, onto her side, then her knees, then her hands and knees, like a baby learning to crawl. The stove was 6 feet away. It might as well have been 6 miles. She crawled, one hand, one knee, one hand, one knee. She reached the stove, fed kindling into the embers with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. The wood caught anyway. Flames licked up. Heat pushed back against the cold. Vivian crawled to the puppies, found another bottle intact. Not cracked, measured formula with shaking hands, spilled half of it, used the other half. The runt latched on, drank. His tiny body vibrated with need. 1 drop at a time. Spirit lay down beside her. Close. Warm. Present. Vivian sat on the kitchen floor, feeding a puppy with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, in a house that was slowly warming back to life. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. Just 1 word, whispered into the silence. All right. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. The hearing was in 6 hours. Vivian woke at 5. Or rather, she opened her eyes at 5. She hadn't really slept. 3 hours on the kitchen floor, propped against the cabinet with Spirit pressed against her side. 3 hours of half-dreams and cold sweats and the sound of puppies breathing. At some point she'd dragged herself to the couch. She didn't remember when. The ceiling above her was cracked in the corner. Water damage from 2 winters ago. Walter would have fixed it. She pushed herself up. Her body protested, hip bruised from last night's fall. Shoulders stiff. Hands already shaking. The tremor was worse when she was tired. She was always tired now. The puppies needed feeding. She shuffled to the kitchen, started the formula, managed to fill 4 bottles without spilling too much. The runt, little one, latched on strong. His eyes were bright now, curious, a survivor, like his mother. Pastor Reed arrived at 7. His old Buick crunched up the gravel driveway. They sat at the kitchen table, coffee between them. Neither spoke for a long time. Whatever happens today, Reed said finally. You did right. Vivian wrapped her trembling hands around the warm mug. Doing right shouldn't cost this much. Usually does. She looked at him, this man who'd known Walter, who'd buried Walter, who'd watched her slowly disappear into this house for 8 years. I should get dressed, she said. The blue dress hung in the back of her closet. She hadn't worn it since Walter's funeral. It still fit. She'd lost weight these past 2 years. The tremor burning calories her body couldn't spare. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, trying to button it. Her fingers fumbled, slipped, fumbled again. The top button defeated her. She left it undone, covered by the collar of her coat. Spirit waited by the door, watching. Vivian knelt slowly, carefully, and touched the dog's face. "Stay," she said. "I'll be back." Hartfield Town Hall was a brick building on Main Street, built in 1923. Vivian had been inside 100 times town meetings, Walter's Volunteer of the Year ceremony, the reception after his funeral. Today, it felt like enemy territory. The hearing room was small. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Folding chairs arranged in rows. A table at the front where Sarah Mitchell sat. Papers spread before her, reading glasses perched on her nose. People were already there. Sheriff Camden in the corner, Dr. Helen in the front row, folder in her lap, a few townspeople scattered throughout familiar faces that wouldn't meet her eyes. Dale Hutchins sat on the left side of the room. Clean flannel shirt, hair combed, looking almost respectable. Clara sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the floor. Vivian took a seat on the right. Pastor Reed settled next to her. Sarah Mitchell looked up. "We'll begin in 5 minutes." Vivian's hands trembled in her lap. Arius Kuhn, her Sarsid. She pressed them flat against her thighs. The 5 minutes lasted forever. "This is an informal hearing," Sarah announced, "to determine custody of one German Shepherd, female, currently in Mrs. Crawford's possession, and 4 puppies born on her property. Mr. Hutchins has filed a claim of ownership. Mrs. Crawford disputes that claim based on allegations of animal cruelty." She looked up. "Mr. Hutchins, present your case." Dale stood, walked to the front with the easy confidence of a man who'd never doubted himself. "The dog's name is Gunner's Pride. Registration papers right here." He handed a folder to Sarah. "Vet records, too. She's been mine 3 years. Sarah examined the documents. Nodded. "She ran off about a month ago," Dale continued. "Looked everywhere. Put up flyers. Then I hear she's at Mrs. Crawford's place." He spread his hands. "I just want my dog back. The puppies, too. I paid good money for that breeding." Sarah made notes. Mrs. Crawford. Vivian stood. Her legs felt weak. She walked to the front, aware of every eye. In the room, old woman in a funeral dress, hands shaking. No lawyer, no support except a preacher and a veterinarian. "I found the dog on my porch," she said. Her voice came out thin. She cleared her throat. "Friday night, January 12th, 17 below. She was starving, half frozen, giving birth alone." She opened her folder, pulled out the Polaroids. "Photos of her condition when I found her." Sarah took them. Something flickered behind her eyes. "Dr. Marsh," Sarah said, "you examined the animal." Helen stood. "Saturday morning, approximately 14 hours after Mrs. Crawford found her. Your findings: severe malnutrition, hypothermia, frostbite on all 4 paw pads." Helen's voice was clinical. "Evidence of long-term physical abuse, multiple cigarette burns, I counted at least 30, a torn ear, healed improperly, 3 healed rib fractures consistent with blunt force trauma." Murmurs rippled through the room. Dale's jaw tightened. "That's circumstantial. Could have happened after she ran off. Month on the streets." "The burns are months old," Helen interrupted. "Some are years old. The scar tissue formation is unmistakable." Silence. Sarah Mitchell looked at Vivian. "Mrs. Crawford, do you have direct evidence that Mr. Hutchins caused these injuries?" This was it, the question she couldn't answer. "No," she said. "Just what I saw. What's written on her body." Dale smirked, just slightly. "Then I'm afraid," Sarah began. "I know what fear looks like." The words came out before Vivian could stop them. Her eyes had found Clara with her hands folded tight. Her shoulders curved inward. Her gaze fixed on the floor. "I've seen it," Vivian continued. In animals. In people. Clara's fingers tightened in her lap. Dale's smirk faded. Sarah Mitchell frowned. Mrs. Crawford, without direct evidence, I have to consider Mr. Hutchins' documentation. Registration, veterinary records, these establish legal ownership. Unless someone can provide first-hand testimony, I can. The voice was small, barely audible. Clara Hutchins was standing. The room went still. Dale turned, his face drained of color. Sit down. No. The word hung in the air. Dale's voice dropped low. Dangerous. Clara, I said sit down. No. Louder now. Clara's hands were trembling. Vivian could see them from across the room, but she didn't sit. I saw it. Clara's voice cracked. I saw what he did to that dog. Clara. He burned her with cigarettes when she wouldn't breathe fast enough. The words tumbled out now, rushing like water through a broken dam. He kicked her in the ribs when she made noise. He threw her out of the truck on Route 7 3 weeks ago because she was too much trouble. Dale lunged. Sheriff Camden moved faster than a man his size should move. He caught Dale by the arm, pulled him back, put himself between husband and wife. Mr. Hutchins, sit down. She's lying. Dale's face had gone purple. She's my wife. I said sit down. Dale sat. Veins stood out in his neck like cables. Clara was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. Her whole body shook, but she stayed standing. I should have said something, she whispered. Years ago, I was scared. She looked at Vivian. Their eyes met. I'm so sorry. Sarah Mitchell removed her glasses, set them on the table. Mr. Hutchins, she said, this hearing is concluded. I'm denying your ownership claim and recommending criminal charges for animal cruelty to the district attorney. This is preliminary. A full investigation will follow. Dale erupted from his chair. You'll regret this. All of you. Sheriff Camden had him by both arms now. Dale Hutchins, let's take a walk. Get your hands off me. They moved toward the door, Dale still shouting, face contorted with rage. The townspeople pressed back against the walls. Then he was gone. The door slammed shut. Clara stood alone in the middle of the room, small, trembling, like a woman who'd stepped off a cliff and was still falling. Vivian walked over. Clara wouldn't meet her eyes. I kept my mouth shut. For years, I watched him hurt that dog and I just... Her voice broke. I couldn't... Vivian reached out, took Clara's hand. 2 hands, both trembling, both scarred in their own ways. I know, Vivian said. Clara looked up. Her eyes were red, swollen, terrified. What do I do now? She whispered. Vivian didn't have an answer. She just held on. The house was quiet when Vivian came home. Spirit met her at the door, tail wagging once, twice, eyes searching Vivian's face for news, for reassurance, for whatever dogs search for when the people they love have been gone too long. It's over, Vivian said. You're staying. She knelt her knees, protested. Her hip still ached from last night's fall and wrapped her arms around Spirit's neck. The dog's fur was warm, softer now, smelling faintly of the oatmeal shampoo Dr. Helen had recommended. The puppies were awake in their box, making small sounds. Hungry. Probably. Always hungry. Pastor Reed had driven her home. He'd offered to stay, but she'd sent him away. She needed to be alone, needed to understand what had just happened. She won. So why did she feel so hollow? Vivian fed the puppies one by one. Her hands trembled through every bottle, every burp, every careful return to the warm box. Little one drank longest, his tiny paws pressing against her palm, his eyes watching her with something that might have been recognition. When they were settled, she sat down by the wood stove. Spirit lay at her feet. The fire crackled softly, pushing warmth into the January darkness. She looked at her hands, still trembling, always trembling. That would never change. The doctors had told her years ago essential tremor. Progressive. No cure. Every year a little worse, every year a little less control. But tonight, something had shifted. She hadn't won because her hands were steady. She hadn't won because she was strong or clever or prepared. She'd won because she kept showing up. Every dropped bottle, every spilled formula, every time she couldn't button her dress, every night on the kitchen floor, crawling toward a dying fire, she showed up anyway. That was all Spirit had needed, not perfection, not the pianist who played for concert halls, just presence. Just someone who opened a door and refused to close it. Vivian walked to the living room. The Steinway sat in the darkness, still uncovered from a week ago. She turned on the lamp. Sat on the bench. First time in 2 years. The keys stretched before her. 88 of them. Ivory yellowed with age, but still smooth, still waiting. Her hands hovered over middle C. Trembling, she pressed the key. The note rang out pure, clear, unchanged by time or neglect. Then another key. Wrong one. Her finger had slipped. She stopped, breathed. Spirit walked over, lowered herself to the floor beside the bench. Watching. I used to play Chopin, Vivian said quietly. Debussy. For hundreds of people. Standing ovations. Spirit's ears twitched. Now, I can't even play a scale. She looked at the dog. Spirit looked back. No judgment. No expectation. Just patience. Vivian turned to the keys. One note. Just one. Middle C. She pressed it deliberately. Watching her trembling finger find the key. The note held. Faded. Then D. Her hand shook, but the finger landed true. E, F, G. Not a scale. Not Chopin. Just notes, one after another. And then, without planning it, her fingers found something else. Something older than her training. Older than the scholarship. Older than Walter. A lullaby. The one her mother used to sing in the farmhouse in Michigan. Before the music lessons. Before any of it. Her hands shook. Notes blurred together. The rhythm stumbled. But she played. For herself, for Spirit, for the puppies sleeping by the stove, for the woman she used to be and the woman she'd become. The last note faded into silence. A sound behind her. Little one had climbed out of the box somehow. He sat on the carpet, head tilted, watching her. Vivian laughed. The sound surprised her. It came from somewhere deep, somewhere she'd forgotten existed. A real laugh. The first in 2 years. You don't know how bad that was, she said. The puppy tilted his head the other way. Good. Let's keep it that way. As she picked him up carefully, gently, and carried him back to the box. That night, Vivian sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. The pen felt strange in her hand. She hadn't written anything except grocery lists in years. Her handwriting was shaky, barely legible, but she wrote anyway. I thought when my hands stopped working, I stopped being real, like I was just waiting to die. And the dying was taking too long. But Spirit didn't come to me because I could play piano. She came because I opened the door. That's all I did. Opened a door, kept a fire lit, held a bottle. Small things. Maybe small things are the only things that matter. Walter would have laughed at me. Still teaching. Viv, he'd say. Even when nobody's paying. I miss him. Every day. But tonight I don't feel so alone. She closed the notebook. Set down the pen. Spirit was asleep by the bedroom door. The puppies were warm in their box. The fire crackled low and steady. Vivian climbed into bed. Pulled the quilt up to her chin, Walter's mother's quilt. Older than her marriage. Older than her career. Still holding warmth after all these years. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in 2 years, she slept through the night. No dreams, no waking at 3 a.m. to stare at the ceiling. Just rest, deep and dark and peaceful. When she opened her eyes again, sunlight was streaming through the curtains. Monday morning, a new week, and somewhere in the distance, church bells were ringing. April came slow to Vermont. The snow melted in patches, revealing mud and dead grass and the first stubborn crocuses pushing through the cold earth. The farmhouse looked different now. Storm door fixed, porch boards replaced, a fresh coat of white paint on the shutters that the Henderson boy had applied last week. 3 of the puppies had found homes. Good homes, carefully chosen. Vivian had interviewed each family herself, asked questions that made some of them uncomfortable. Turned away 2 who didn't pass her inspection. 1 puppy stayed, Waltz, the runt, the survivor. He was chasing something in the front yard now, a squirrel. Probably, or maybe just a leaf caught in the wind. His legs had grown long and strong, his coat thick and glossy. He looked nothing like the tiny creature she'd held against her chest that first frozen night. Spirit lay on the porch beside Vivian's chair, watching her son with the patient amusement of a mother who'd seen it all before. Inside the house, voices drifted through the open window. The community center had been too far for some of the older folks to drive, so Vivian had opened her living room instead. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, piano lessons for seniors, no auditions, no expectations, just music. Clara Hutchins sat at the Steinway now. She'd filed for divorce in February, moved into her sister's place in Montpelier, started over at 42 with nothing but a suitcase and a restraining order. Her hands still shook. Nerves, trauma, years of flinching at sudden sounds. A wrong note rang out. Clara stopped. "I hit it again," she said. "The B flat." Vivian's voice came through the window, calm and steady. "So, hit another one. Keep going. That easy. No, but you do it anyway." A pause, then the music resumed. Halting, imperfect. Alive, the sun was setting over the green mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air smelled like thawing earth and wood smoke, and something green underneath spring, pushing through whether anyone was ready or not. Spirit lifted her head, rested it on Vivian's knee. The same gesture as that first night. The same warmth. The same trust. "You picked one heck of a porch to have your babies," Vivian said quietly. Spirit's tail wagged, once. "Yeah." Vivian's hand, trembling, always trembling, settled on the dog's head. "Me too." Inside, Clara played on. Wrong notes and right notes and all the notes in between. The Steinway stood open. No dust. No sheet. Ready for tomorrow. Vivian lifted her coffee cup. It shook in her grip, liquid trembling against the rim. She took a sip anyway. There is something quiet that stays with us after a story like this one. Not a lesson, not a message wrapped in ribbon. Just a feeling tender, familiar, maybe a little heavy in the chest. Many of us know what it means to feel useless. To watch our hands fail at things they used to do without thinking. To wonder if anyone would notice if we simply stopped trying. Some of us have opened doors we weren't sure we should open. Reached out when we had nothing left to give. Loved something or someone without knowing if it would matter in the end. Perhaps you have carried that weight too. The quiet kind. The kind nobody sees. It is all right if this story stirred something in you that does not have a name. It is okay if it sits with you a while longer. unfinished, unresolved. Some things are not meant to be understood, they are just meant to be felt, and that is enough. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for staying until the end.